Hello, everyone. This is Stephen, and welcome to Democracy Demythologized. Today, I'm talking with Ofeira, who is a climate scientist from Samoa. So she does a lot of climate research across the Pacific Islands, and she does a lot of research trying to monitor and understand how different issues impacting the environment in this region. This is a particularly vulnerable region when it comes to both climate change and maybe some issues caused by changes within the community like urbanization. So that's what we're going to talk about. This episode's going to have a little bit more. Many of my episodes have had a focus on the United States. Today it's going to be a little bit broader, and we're going to focus on a different region of the world. So I hope you enjoy. One quick note: we're having some internet connection issues, so the on the video our voices were not synced with the audio, so it's going to be audio only because it's just a little hard to listen to, hard to watch the video. Hello, everyone. I'm here with Ofeira. Ofeira, how are you doing?
Hi, Stephen. I'm good, thank you.
Yeah. So, Ofeira, you live in Samoa and you do a lot of work with climate science. Do you want to walk us through what you do?
Yeah, well, sure. So in simple terms, I help make sure development projects like buildings, seawalls, roads, bridges, or agricultural facilities are planned and carried out in a way that doesn't harm the environment or communities. I mostly work across the Pacific with governments, communities, and development partners. So it usually involves doing environmental and social impact assessments, writing up environmental and social management plans, applying for development consents, and working closely with affected people, affected communities, and relevant stakeholders. I also advise on how to meet both national laws and donor requirements. So it's a lot of balancing different perspectives while keeping the environment and people at the center.
Oh, okay, that's awesome. So it seems like you work across the Pacific, and this is a region that is being pretty significantly affected by some, human-made changes to the climate. What parts of the Pacific do you typically work in? I mean, what are there particular regions within or countries, or where do you typically work?
Okay, so I'm based in Samoa, but my work has taken me across the region. I've worked in places like New Zealand, Tuvalu, Timor-Leste, Papua New Guinea, Kiribati, Fiji, Tonga, and Vanuatu. And I have upcoming assignments in the Solomon Islands and Marshall Islands. So most of that work is through regional programs supported by partners like the World Bank, the Pacific Regional Infrastructure Facility through the Asian Development Bank, and the Secretariat of the Pacific Region Environment Program, or SPRIP. So I get to see a broad picture of the region, but also understand each country's unique challenges in the area of environment and social risk management.
Yeah, this makes total sense. So maybe let's get into the juice of what you were just talking about. So at the end of that, so what do you see as some of the biggest, based off of all these different your different work and doing all these different impact assessments, what do you see as some of the biggest environmental issues affecting the Pacific right now?
Okay, so there's quite a few, and many of them stem from unsustainable development practices, like coastal degradation is a big one, especially where development has happened without proper planning or consideration for the natural environment and surrounding communities. We also face serious challenges with waste, particularly plastic and hazardous materials, which are difficult to manage on small islands. Deforestation and biodiversity loss are ongoing issues, especially in areas where land is being cleared for agricultural settlements. And in urban centers, water pollution is becoming more common as natural systems are increasingly under pressure. But then on top of all that, we're also seeing the more visible impacts of climate change, like rising sea levels, more coastal erosion, frequent flooding, and stronger and more unpredictable storms. And these are affecting everything from food security and infrastructure to people's safety and cultural heritage.
Mm.
Yeah.
I mean, this does seem like a lot. It also seems like it it seems like some of this is based off of humans trying to build. Some of this is based off of things that maybe people are doing in other countries that are causing issues in Polynesia or in the Pacific Island. What's your take? I mean, what do you think? Um, like, I guess, what do you think we're doing that are leading to some of these issues, and what can we do to help it, like, address or help, you know, maybe
Yeah.
let's say thrive as communities while not biting into some of this stuff?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, from experience working in the Pacific, one of the main drivers is the growing pressure to develop, develop fast. So across the region, there's increasing demand for housing, and I'm sure you're seeing this through your travels in the Pacific.
I
There's
definitely am.
increasing demand for housing, infrastructure, tourism facilities, and economic growth. And while development is necessary, when it's rushed or poorly planned, as is often the case here in Pacific, um, it's often at the expense of the environment, and that's the natural, physical, and human environment. And so this pressure can lead to, coastal developments too close to the shoreline, deforestation for land use, and poor waste management systems that can't keep up with demand. And in many cases, developments go ahead without proper environmental assessments or long-term planning, which leads to, cumulative impacts on fragile ecosystems. So at the same time, another problem is the enforcement of environmental regulations. It can be weak, often due to limited capacity or resources within government agencies, and that is a common problem throughout the Pacific. And even when the laws are there, it's a challenge to monitor and enforce them consistently. And then, of course, we have the global layer, which is climate change. It's accelerating many of these environmental pressures in the Pacific. Even though Pacific nations contribute very little to global emissions, we're seeing some of the most severe impacts, especially along our coasts. So, lastly, the cultural shifts also play a role. As communities modernize, some traditional knowledge systems that once supported sustainable resource use are being lost or overlooked in our Pacific nations, and it makes it harder to maintain balance between development and environmental stewardship.
Yeah, this makes total sense. With this last one, the kind of these cultural practices that are no longer able to be done. That can you give maybe an example of like here's a set of here's a way that people typically kind of created a better relationship with different aspects of the environment, but then it's not possible to do right now, or it's being undermined?
Well, there's in Samoa we have our traditional land use patterns. So we have allocated lands for plantations, allocated land for settlements. But now that pattern is being what's the word? It's being overtaken by the the movement of people from rural areas to the urban towns, and that is not and that's being impacted on with the traditional use of lands, and also the taking of customary lands, and most of them are now freehold lands or government lands. So there is no longer that practice of traditional land use.
I could definitely see that. I could see it, like in my experience traveling throughout these islands, I've seen a lot of urbanization, and urbanization might undermine. It might. if less people are maintaining the farms, then the farms, you fall into disuse. The farmland, it could get gobbled up by others or by the government. Yeah. And maybe more broadly, I mean, one thing I think that about these that struck me traveling throughout the Pacific, you were talking about this before with the 5 issues you mentioned, but many of the countries are, by global standards, very small in terms of population. So, like, many countries have a population around or under 100,000, but they're encountering a lot of different issues. And I could see that leading to governments not necessarily having the resources to be able to address the issues that they're having, whether those issues are based off of how people within the society are moving and changing their lives, or whether that's from issues from abroad that are impacting them. And I could see, like in your case, as a evaluator, I mean, you're very front and center with problems where if a government's trying to do something real quick and they're not considering the environmental impact, you're very much on the front lines of that. Or, yeah, what's that like? Or how do you maybe help governments try to actually think about these issues, given what it is that they might be trying to do or build?
Well, yes. That is part of my job, is just trying to be at the forefront of helping to manage our environment and communities where developments take place. And I'm very thankful that some of the work that I'm doing is to help our governments build capacity and develop capacity in governments to improve their environmental and social risk management systems. So, it's quite exciting because we realize that there is a gap, there is a challenge in that area, and so now we are trying to help improve that system.
That's awesome. You were talking about climate change.
Yes.
What do you see as like some of the biggest ways that climate change is impacting these island countries?
There's a few impacts of climate change that we're seeing in the Pacific, like I've listed before, with sea level rise, coastal flooding, changes in rainfall patterns. Like, we're supposed to be in the dry season now, but it's like still rainy. A lot of rainfall recorded. Stronger storms. We've had some very strong storms recorded in the Pacific in recent years. And another problem is salt water affecting crops. Those are some of the impacts of climate change that is very real. And the Pacific people they feel that every day. Those are the impacts that I see around the Pacific with the work that I'm doing.
Yeah, this is very sad. I mean, this region seems very front and center because climate change is affecting the ocean, and people in island countries have a very intimate relationship with the ocean. And maybe as an example, when I was in Samoa a couple weeks ago, it rained a lot. And it's funny that you say it's the dry season, because I thought it was the rainy season because it rained for 5 days. I was like, I guess on a practical level, I just assumed it was the rainy season because it was raining so much.
It's usually the dry season, dry and cool season right now, but it's just been raining and it's hot. Yeah.
And it seems like that, how does that impact communities? I guess all this would impact agriculture, the ability for people to grow things, or how does it?
And that too. Yeah, it affects agriculture, produce, And I think the other thing that I forgot to mention is, sea level rise. Countries like Tuvalu and Kiribati, they're feeling that pressure because of the low-lying islands, and when that happens, they're going to lose their islands and their homes, and so that's another very real impact of climate change in the Pacific.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And it seems like, I mean, someone's a whole island or maybe even a whole country going underwater would be pretty devastating. And even for islands like Samoa that are frankly very mountainous, so you're probably not going to have the whole place submerged. In my experience, most people seem to live along the coast. I mean, Apia, the big city, is very much along the coast. Fiji with Suva and is like that too. I mean, that even threatens people.
Yes, of course. Yeah. Of coastal developments. Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
But at least we have the mountains to relocate to. But with the low-lying atolls in the Pacific, they have nowhere to run when that happens.
Right. They have nowhere to climb to. What do you think people can do about some of these issues? So I guess I'm going to ask that question in two parts. I mean, we have some of these issues are based off of some changes within the countries, right? And some of these issues like climate change are very much caused by other parts of the world that are hurting you guys. So I guess maybe it makes the most sense to kind of split that and say, in your experience, maybe within Pacific Island countries, what can people do to best address some of these issues? And then we'll talk about around the world what people can do.
Yeah, well, I think first and foremost, I want to say that, personally, I think I acknowledge that climate change is not just man-made. The Earth's climate has always gone through natural cycles, warming and cooling periods long before modern industry. And these changes will continue with or without us. And I just want to say, as a Pacific Islander, most of us are Christians. And from that lens, we understand that the Earth as we know it is temporary. The Bible tells us there will be a new earth and new heavens, but it also tells us that we are stewards, that we've been being entrusted to look after creation. So that will go towards answering what we can do locally. Because while we may not be able to stop the broader natural processes, we still have a responsibility to care for the earth, to protect our people, and to act with wisdom and compassion. So I think when it comes down to it, it's all about balance. Yes, some of this is natural and beyond our control, but that doesn't mean we sit back. We're still called to be good stewards, whether you're coming from a faith perspective or not. That means for us locally is taking care of our ecosystems, using resources wisely, planning ahead, and making sure our communities are equipped to deal with change, especially those who are vulnerable. So for some examples of our work that we're doing locally, community-based resource management works really well with our traditional village governance. When our village governance is strong, community-based resource management works really well. So, for example, in my village, we have one of the biggest mangrove stands around the urban area here in Apia. And so our village council, develops bylaws that protects the mangroves from damage from people throwing rubbish in it or cutting the mangroves or reclaiming over it. So that is in place. If anybody breaks that law, that village law, they will be, they'll be fined. I've also seen some youth and women's groups out in the villages. They lead waste management programs like composting waste separation initiatives, and that really works as well because, as you know, waste management is a big challenge for us here in the Pacific. So that works very well for us. But where it fails is when solutions are imposed on us from a sort of like a top-down approach, where communities are not involved, and where projects are delivered, but they don't have a sustainable plan for it to continue.
Yeah, this makes total. But what you said makes total sense, and with the final part, I think it's very. I mean, it seems like communities are necessary both for buy-in, but also, like I've seen in other parts of the world, I'm going to give an example. Many development projects that are basically created from afar. Maybe they're funded by some other country that's a continent away. This can be the United States. This can be China. These are the most two common funders. And maybe they do something. You have like projects like dams that displace communities that can have huge ecological effects. But often if they might build it, they come there for a year or two, they spend a couple $1 million, they build it, and then in effect they leave. And if you leave, like while they built it, they might have a plan in place for how to keep things sustainable, but what's necessary then after they leave is not something that community can sustain. And so then suddenly the place becomes a type of a burden to the environment and to the community. What are your thoughts? Are there any parallels in the Pacific to this, or this is definitely something I've seen that I was thinking about with what you were saying?
And that's why development partners are now working to improve environmental and social risk management, because they realize if they don't have that in place for any of the development projects that are implemented in the country, in Pacific countries, then it won't be successful. So there have been some projects. I can't speak for other Pacific island countries, but here in Samoa, we are going through some projects that are facing those problems, and but that's the good thing about going through environmental and social monitoring during projects, because there you can identify those issues and then try to resolve them before the project is completed, and to ensure that when the project is completed, it will be sustainable for the locals and the local communities.
Can we talk about some of the things people can do in other parts of the world outside of Pacific Islands to help address some of the environmental issues that you guys are facing, given that and I guess I'm thinking the world more broadly, but this definitely includes the United States, have definitely caused you guys a number of problems?
Well, I think just having that system in place, a comprehensive system in place to ensure that environment and social impacts are part of any development project, from its design, planning phases, during construction and after construction, just ensuring that there is monitoring in place and enforcement of compliance, because a lot of contractors that are actually doing the work is not complying. But if you have that system in place to enforce compliance, then projects will deliver what it's supposed to deliver, and deliver the results for the communities that it's supposed to serve, and also for the donors.
Yeah, this makes total sense. I've seen a lot of compliance issues in the environmental space around, like, I think one common theme I'll see in some environmental discussions are a tale of, we had great intentions and then we never said that we never did the things we said we would, and it becomes more of an, like, the implementation, because it can be very easy to say you're doing certain things.
Yeah. But when there is no monitoring and enforcement, then they can do whatever they they want. Yeah.
Is it common, or is it? I'm assuming it happens, or that there are kind of foreign contractors that will come in and they'll stipulate that they'll follow certain parameters, and when they actually go to the island or to the nation question, they don't do anything at all.
Yes, it's common. It's common.
Wow. Okay.
And that's why we're trying to. And that's why we're trying to improve the system to make sure that contractors comply.
What do you do when this happens, when they're not compliant? Like, how do you get them to comply, or what do you do about it? Is there something that, are there things you found that help?
Yeah, well, what we do is we make sure that environmental and social considerations are included in contracts, and from there, contracts are managed to ensure that they follow their contracts. And if there is a breach in contract, then there will be penalties.
Okay. Okay. So,
but it's just a matter. But it's just a matter of monitoring it and enforcing. That is a challenge.
Okay.
In the Pacific.
In what
we just
way?
need to strengthen that. In what way? Staff, having personnel to do the monitoring and compliance enforcement, having having equipment to monitor activities, construction activities, to ensure that standards are being met, having in place health and safety policies, health and safety inspectors.
Yeah. I mean, all of this makes total sense. I bet it's super important to get it into the contract what the punishments would be for not complying. But at the same time, it seems like it becomes a type of proof game where you guys have to prove they're not complying. And through that, you need all these different people on the ground and different ways of measuring it. And I bet that's much easier said than done, especially if you guys are kind of short-staffed or under-resourced.
Yes, very much in the Pacific, very much. There's a lack of staffing and personnel to do the work that is required for environmental and social risk management. Mm-hmm. And so the things that we're trying to encourage governments that this is a priority and must be strengthened.
One other question I wanted to ask you. So, yeah, in your experience working with the government and working with a lot of different private corporations who are doing various contracts, what have you found that works, and what have you found that doesn't work for, I guess, fostering better environmental practices? We'll say in general.
I find that what works is having contract supervisors on behalf of government to fill in that gap, because usually there is not enough staff to do supervision. And so, but then again, it requires funding. But it's something that's worked where governments have set aside budget for having supervisors in place, because then they are the ones who can monitor contracts and ensure that there's no breaches in contract, including aspects of environmental and social um, and health safety. So that is very effective. But what is not working well is, and something that we have identified now and trying to improve is the monitoring and compliance and enforcement of compliance, which we have already talked about. And that is something that we're now working with government to build capacity within the government agencies who do this job, who are responsible for environmental and social management, so that future developments are can be successfully implemented in the Pacific.
Mm, mm. Yeah, this makes sense. I also wanted to ask you about, so what role do you think other countries from other parts of the world, say like the US, what role do you think they could have in trying to address some of the issues, environmental issues you guys are facing in the Pacific? I mean, and obviously, some of these issues they've had some impact in causing. But yeah, what role do you think other parts of the world can play in trying to address some of these?
Well, I think support in the form of technology and capacity building would be very helpful for us. I think those are the sort of assistance that we need to build up our capacity in the islands, and ensuring that we are self-sustaining, and that we don't have to depend on other countries for funding. But if we build up our own capacity and find ways to improve our systems, I am very confident that we can do it. Yeah.
That makes sense. It seems like if you guys have the technology, the necessary technology, because I bet in the environmental space, a lot of this technology can be very, well, technical, and it can be very intricate and specific and complex.
Yes. We need a lot of that help to gather, environmental data, scientific data, to help provide that baseline to conduct comprehensive assessments of environmental and social impacts. Right now, we don't have we don't have technology to do that, and we need that assistance. And it will be very helpful for us.
And tell me if this part's wrong, but it seems like it would be, you have that, there's a saying in the US, which is if you fish for somebody, they have food to eat for a day. If you teach a man to fish, they can fish for a lifetime. If they constantly give you this technology, then you're dependent on them. But if you have access to it, you can start doing it on your own, on your own board.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
One other question I wanted to ask you, maybe on an individual level, somebody who wanted to learn more specifically about the environmental issues in the Pacific Island region, where can they go? What would be some of the best ways that people can learn about what's going on and kind of dig into some of the details there.
Well, I've already mentioned the Secretary of the Pacific Region Environmental Program, SPRED. They have a website that has a lot of information on the environment for the Pacific Islands.
Hey, this is Stephen, making a brief note, recording this after the fact. She was breaking up a little bit as she was giving the name of the organization. I included the website below, but I just wanted to say the name of it out loud for anyone interested in checking it out. It's sprep.org. All right, back to her.
If you want to, research and also help in any way, their platform is very good for environmental information in the Pacific. But everyone can play a part. You can learn about the Pacific, our challenges and our strengths. All the information is available online. Even for Pacific Island governments, they have their own environmental websites that has all the information that is needed. And then you can that shows our challenges and our strengths. So you can also support our local efforts. Whether it's through advocacy. If you can donate to a local cause, we've got NGOs in place who do volunteer programs in communities. And just live more simply, reduce waste, speak up for sustainable management of our environment and community livelihood, and just care for your creation, for the creation.
Just like you talked about governments funding and giving you guys the resources, like the technology necessary to work on these projects yourself and work independently. I wonder if, for individuals, if donating to local organizations is kind of an equivalent to that. It might be a way that they can help you guys have the tools and resources necessary to do the work that, as a community, you guys know you need to do on your own islands. One thing, I think this is going back to what you were talking about with stewardship a bit ago, but one thing I think that I very much personally came to terms with in the traveling throughout the Pacific, some of the Pacific Islands made me really think about how much nature changes. I mean, nature has always changed, but it's often changed. Like geology changes in a time scale that's well beyond their lives, right? Mountain ranges, they come and go in the span of millions of years, not our lifetimes. But in the Pacific, it's like some places, Samoa, Hawaii are two examples of this, that you have actively forming volcanoes, you have actively forming islands. It's like you experience, here's a new landscapes that are almost being shaped tomorrow. Like you might be there and something might happen and now suddenly you have a new space that you didn't have before. And I think for me personally, it makes me think about how much we're in relationship with nature and how much we're both a part of nature, but nature isn't this like eternal thing that we're messing up. Nature is something that we're a part of and very much in relationship with, and we go back and forth, and we need to make sure that it's a living, breathing thing that just like a fellow human that we need to make sure is vibrant. And I don't know your thoughts on this.
Very true. Yeah.
Why do you say that?
Yeah. Well, that's exactly what it is, because our land, our culture is tied to our lands and how we care for it. And so it's different from the concept of ownership. And it's more about stewardship. that we don't own the land, but we are there to steward it for our, for future generations. And so when we do take care of it, that is what we're passing on to our children. And it comes in the form of, the way that we inherit chiefly titles, because our chiefly titles are also tied to the land. And so when we take care of the land, that title continues to be passed on from one generation to the next.
I like that. It seems like that's part of your legacy.
Yeah, and it shows when a family doesn't take care of their lands, like if it's neglected, they lose that stewardship of the land. And whoever is going to take care of the land, those people will then have the right to the title to continue caring for the land and using it to be passed down their kids to use.
So it seems like taking care of the land is something that people as a family have to do to maintain their land, and to do that for the benefit of both their kids and the community overall.
Exactly.
So if they neglect their land, the community is going to come to them and say, what gives? We're going to give this to someone who can.
Yeah.
Maybe we need to do that around the world. I think
there you go. That's a lesson that can be used all over the world.
Yeah, I like that. I guess with that as our parting conclusion, I guess take care of the land, or we'll figure out a way to take it from you. Thanks for taking the time to talk now. Maybe a quick question: if there's anyone who wanted to learn specifically about the organization that you work for or the work that you do, where can they go?
The Pacific Region Infrastructure Facility, they have a website. You just type the Pacific Regional Infrastructure Facility, and it will give all the information of the work that they're doing in the Pacific in the area of environment and social management.
Okay, that's awesome. I'll try to include that in the description below. And thanks for taking the time today.
Thank you for inviting me to be on your podcast, and all the best with your travels and the work that you're doing. Thank you for giving us a platform to talk about our Pacific islands and our and the challenges that we're going through, and also the hope of a brighter future. Mapitai lava.